Most men will never realize the thing quietly destroying their reputation. It's not their habits, it's not their discipline, it's not their bank account. It's 5 specific phrases, and the reason they're so dangerous is because they sound completely normal. Your boss says them. Your dad probably says them. You've said at least one of them today. Ancient Stoic philosophy identified these exact patterns of speech over 2,000 years ago and called them the clearest sign that a man has surrendered control of his own mind. I'm going to show you all 5. I'm going to show you what's happening inside a man's psychology the moment he says each one. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you will never hear these phrases the same way again. Stay with me, because number 3 is the one that catches almost everyone. Before we get into it, here's why this matters more than you think. Words aren't just sounds, they're diagnostic tools. If you know what to listen for, a man's language reveals his entire inner world. His fears, his self-worth, his actual relationship with responsibility, within about 60 seconds of conversation. The Stoics built a philosophy around this idea. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth during his lifetime, used his private journal to police his own speech every single night. Not his enemy's speech, not his advisor's speech, his own. Because he understood something most modern men have completely lost. The words you let yourself say become the thoughts you can't stop thinking. That's what this video is about. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the one that's easiest to spot in others and hardest to spot in yourself. It's not my fault. Now I want you to pause for a second before you assume this doesn't apply to you, because this phrase doesn't always sound like it's not my fault. Sometimes it sounds like the market was bad. Nobody told me that. I didn't have the same opportunities. Same energy, different packaging. Here's the psychology of what's happening when a man says this. He's made a subconscious decision that protecting his ego in this moment is more important than solving the problem. That's it. That's the whole thing. The blame isn't even really about the other person or the circumstances. It's a defense mechanism. It's a way of saying, I am not powerful enough to handle being wrong, so let me find somewhere else to put this. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire during plague, war, and economic collapse, events he didn't cause and couldn't fully control. And yet, in his private writings, the ones we now call meditations, he never once blamed external events for his internal state. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice, he doesn't say ignore outside events. He doesn't say external things don't hurt. He's saying your response is always yours. And the man who claims that response, even when it's painful, is the man who builds real power over time. The reframe isn't, "It is my fault." That's just blame pointed inward. The reframe is, "What is mine to act on here?" That one question changes everything. It moves you from victim to agent. It moves you from defending your past to building your future. And the next time you feel those words forming, "It's not my fault," catch them. Not to judge yourself, just to notice, because that impulse is telling you exactly where you feel powerless. And that's valuable information.
This one is sneakier, because it often comes with a tone of confidence, even intelligence. I already know that. Men say this in conversations, in meetings, when reading books, when someone tries to give them advice. And on the surface, it sounds fine. It sounds like a man who's informed and prepared. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. When you say, "I already know that," you stop listening. And the moment you stop listening, you stop receiving. And the moment you stop receiving, you stop growing. And growth in a man's life is not optional. It's either happening or it's reversing. There is no neutral. Epictetus was a slave, not metaphorically, literally a slave. Owned, controlled, physically abused, He had nothing by any external measure. And yet he became one of the most respected philosophers in Roman history. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius studied his work. Generations of generals, statesmen, and thinkers were shaped by his ideas. How does a slave become that? Epictetus himself answers it directly. He writes, "It is impossible to learn that which one thinks one already knows." Read that again slowly. It is impossible to learn what you think you already know. The phrase, "I already know that," is a closed door. And behind closed doors, nothing new gets in. What you knew 5 years ago isn't enough for where you're trying to go 5 years from now. The most powerful men, in business, in philosophy, in history, share one trait that looks almost embarrassing from the outside. They ask obvious questions. They take notes in rooms where they're the expert. They treat a conversation with a 22-year-old the same way they'd treat a conversation with a CEO. Because they've internalized something the ego refuses to accept. You don't know how much you're missing until you stay open long enough to receive it. Next time you feel that phrase rising, "I already know this," try replacing it with a question instead. Any question, even a simple one. You'll be stunned by what comes back.
We're halfway through, and I want to tell you, the last two phrases are the ones people never talk about. They're subtle, they're socially acceptable, and they might be the most damaging of all. Stick with me. Here it is, number 3, the one I promised you. That's impossible. And before you think, okay, I don't actually say that, let me show you the disguised versions. That's not realistic. People like us don't do that. That only works if you're lucky, connected, or already rich. Same phrase, cleaner packaging. Seneca wrote something that cuts through every version of this excuse. He wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." Sit with that for a moment. He's saying difficulty isn't the cause of inaction. Fear is. The word impossible is almost always a fear response wearing a rational costume. It sounds like an objective assessment of reality. It's actually a way of giving yourself permission to not try while keeping your ego intact. Because if something is impossible, you can't be blamed for not doing it. The psychological function of this phrase is self-protection. It protects you from the risk of failure. But here's the cost. It also protects you from the possibility of success. Think about the things men said were impossible 50 years ago in medicine, in technology, in civil rights, in exploration. The people who achieved those things didn't have extra intelligence or extra resources. They had a refusal to accept the word impossible as a final verdict. The reframe here is simple but powerful. Stop asking, "Is this possible?" Start asking, "What would the first step look like?" Impossible is a destination. The first step is a direction, and you can always take a direction.
This one wears a mask, and the mask looks like strength. I don't care. Men say this to seem above it all, detached, unbothered. And there is a version of not caring that is genuinely powerful. The Stoics called it apatheia, freedom from irrational desires, the ability to not be controlled by things outside your control. But that's not what most men mean when they say, "I don't care." What most men mean is, "I don't want to be held responsible for the outcome." There's a massive difference between a man who doesn't care about gossip or social status because he's anchored to something deeper, and a man who doesn't care about his health, his relationships, his work, or his character because caring would require effort. The first man is free. The second man is hiding. Epictetus draws this line clearly. He divides all of life into two categories, things within your control and things outside your control. About things outside your control, What others think of you, the weather, the economy. The wise man is genuinely indifferent. It's not an act. It's a practiced, earned indifference. But about things within his control, his choices, his effort, his integrity, his character, the wise man cares enormously. He cares so deeply he's willing to suffer for them. He's willing to lose things for them because he knows they're the only things that are truly his. When a man says, "I don't care," about something that's actually within his control, his fitness, his finances, the quality of his work, how he treats the people he loves, he's not being a Stoic. He's being avoidant. The question to ask yourself when you feel this phrase forming is, am I genuinely free of this, or am I just tired of trying? Those are two very different things, and only one of them leads somewhere worth going.
The last one. And if I'm honest, this is the one that keeps men small the longest, because it masquerades as intelligence. What's in it for me? It sounds rational. It sounds strategic. In certain business contexts, it's even taught as a virtue. Know your value, protect your interests, don't give away your time for free. And there's truth in that. Boundaries matter, self-respect matters. But there's a difference between self-respect and self-obsession. And what's in it for me as an operating system is self-obsession dressed up as strategy. Marcus Aurelius used an image for this that I think about often: the beehive. He writes, "What is not good for the hive cannot be good for the bee." The bee doesn't stand at the entrance to the hive calculating its return on investment before going to work. The bee contributes, and through that contribution, the hive survives, the bee survives, and the entire system sustains itself. Now apply this to your life. The men who command the deepest loyalty, the men who build the most lasting wealth, the men who leave something behind that outlives them, they are almost never the men asking, "What's in it for me?" They're the men asking, "What can I build here? What does this person need? How can I contribute to something larger than my own comfort?" Because here is the paradox that the selfish man never discovers. The less you ask what's in it for you, the more comes back to you. Not because the universe is sentimental, because people who add value attract resources, opportunities, and trust. And those things compound over time the same way money does. The reframe is a complete inversion. Stop asking what you can extract, start asking what you can create. That one shift, applied consistently over years, is the difference between a man who has things and a man who is something. Let's bring it all together. 5 phrases, 5 moments where a man's language reveals exactly what he believes about himself. "It's not my fault," reveals a man who has outsourced his power. "I already know that," reveals a man whose ego has closed the door on growth. "That's impossible," reveals a man who is using language to avoid fear. "I don't care," reveals a man using indifference as armor against accountability. "What's in it for me?" reveals a man whose world is too small. The Stoics weren't obsessed with speech because they liked words. They were obsessed with speech because they understood something modern psychology has since confirmed. The language you use, out loud, to others, and silently to yourself, shapes the neural architecture of how you think. Your words don't just reflect your mindset. Over time, they build it. This means you have more agency over who you become than most people ever realize. Not through big dramatic changes, not through a single defining moment, but through the quiet, daily discipline of catching a weak phrase before it leaves your mouth and choosing a stronger one instead. That's the work. That's what the Stoics were actually teaching. Here's what I want you to do this week. Just one thing. Pick the phrase from this list you know you say the most. Don't judge it, don't spiral about it. Just watch for it. Every time you catch yourself about to say it, pause for 3 seconds. That pause is where your character gets built. 3 seconds of awareness, practiced daily, changes who you are over months. That's not motivation, that's neuroscience, that's philosophy. That's how it actually works. Drop a comment right now and tell me which phrase is your biggest pattern. I read every single one.
And if this hit differently than your average self-improvement content, subscribe to Stoic 95. We don't do surface-level inspiration here. We do the real work of applying ancient philosophy to the actual problems modern men face. New video every week. I'll see you in the next one.